Hello, everybody. Welcome to a code um, recap. I'm gonna be doing a bit of some changes. I feel like these videos have been replacing my actual classes. So, for starters, I'm going to just be going over the code instead of actually making a new document because I want this to be abridged, and also so it's just faster to do a code recap instead of just making it myself. Because you have to watch me type and stuff. And we can keep the pace moving. And also, it serves as a supplement for the class instead of a replacement. Um, so yeah, I just want to make sure that we've covered everything that we have in class, but I don't want it to become class, this YouTube video. Um, so what we did cover that I'm not going to be talking about here is we covered sorting algorithms and time and space complexity in algorithms. I'll just move my mic a bit closer to my mouth. And so, yeah, I'm not going to be covering that here because it's not really essential to what we're learning. It was just some cool stuff that I wanted to share in the last 15 minutes of class. So, um, yeah, let's get started then. So, uh, here is the code that we wrote. Um, we have our HTML tag for HTML, and we have our setup here, our script tag with our linking our JavaScript file to our HTML, and that is in our head. We're not going to be doing CSS um, because I just want to focus on making an application. Oh, and by the way, this is a calculator that calculates exponents. Let me open this up. Yeah, so you just put your base right here, for example 4, and you put your exponent here, squared, and you get 16. So we just didn't do CSS because um, we kind of covered most of that. Uh, most of the CSS stuff, and it's really just looking up uh, what to modify and how to modify it. Um, there are still a bit of loose strands that I have to tie up in CSS, and maybe we can even go to 3D animation stuff like that. But for just basic level website design, right now we're good for CSS. All right, so in the body we have our h1 tag as our title, which is pretty per usual. We have two inputs right here, input and input right here for the base and exponent. And so these are just the two input tags that we have over here. We're also labeling them. So in previous classes we used a label. So pretty much what it is it's label and then you put for, as in for, and the ID of what you want to label. And then the ID for that, I mean, we don't really need to use the ID, but you always want to put IDs on stuff just in case. Good practice. And we just put the text over here, what we want the text to be, and then end the tag. Same for here. We also have a p tag with the ID output, as we usually do, where the output is just over there. That's where the output goes. And if we just reload the page, you see output goes here. That is the default. All right, now onto the JavaScript, the bread and butter. So um, we're making our so what we want the site to do is we want you to type in a number for your base, a number for your exponent, and then you press enter on your keyboard, and then it outputs your result. So for that, we need to do this function called event listener. Well, actually, it's really just this. So this code right here is in the function. We'll get to that later. So we have document.addEventListener. So there, we're introduced to a new type of coding here in document.addEventListener. So what this is it's called asynchronous coding. So we've been coding previously, we've been coding synchronously, where it goes, it reads the code, it processes the code, and then it executes it first line, second line, third line, fourth line, fifth line, and so on and so forth. So it executes it line by line, which is usually good, but if you want to do something like wait on the user to let's say enter an input, you don't want to do that because the problem with synchronous coding is that uh, it stops if you're waiting on the user to do something like we're doing right here by adding an event listener, if we did this synchronously, then it'll just stop there. And it'll wait for the user to press enter, and it won't do any other processing. It won't do any other calculation. So if you're like animating something on in JavaScript, if you're doing like an animation like moving a dot around the screen, and you get to a and you're using this function synchronously, which there's different syntax. So this is the asynchronous version, and you're trying to detect user input synchronously, for example, a key press, then it will just stop there and it'll stop animating that red dot moving on the screen, which obviously it's gonna look weird. So you don't want that. So what an asynchronous function does is it moves through the code, and once it gets to this function, it just makes a little note that says, "Hey, I need to listen for when the user presses enter, or the user presses a key." So yeah, and it just waits and makes a mental note, and then it moves on. And then once you press a key, it comes back to this code, and then it executes it. So this type of function is called, or this type of function, yeah, it's called a promise. So pretty much what you do is you promise something over here called the key, or in this case, it's a key press. We're promising the computer, hey, the user is going to do a key press. That's called the promise. And then you have the action right here, which is what we're doing. We are running a function, and in the function, if the event, which is what it takes in right here, if the key code is 13, which is the enter, the code for enter, then it takes what this exponent function returns, and it sets that to output. And then it runs this function, event listener, which is the same thing. So if we didn't have this right here, the problem that we'd have is this would only run once after you pressed enter. It wouldn't detect it again because there's no repeat. So by adding this, we have the function when it's done call itself again so that it says, oh, okay, I'm done. I'm going to listen again for that to see if there's another key press of enter. So that's this part of the code all done. Now we come over to the exponent function. So I don't think we've actually covered returning before, but so functions can have an input and an output. So we don't really use it. So right here we can see the function, and then you have the parentheses. What you put in here is an input, what it takes in. So in this case, we're taking in the event, which is whatever happens to your a keyboard event, pretty much. And then in this case, you can output stuff too. You can output using return. So what return will do is it will break out of the function. So it'll stop running the function, and then it'll pass on a certain data value that either could be like, let's say, a number, a variable, a string, anything like that. And I'll stop the function too, until you call it again. So what we could have done is we could have just said document.getElementById output.enter HTML equals this string, but this is just a cleaner way of doing it. Because then, let's say this gets fulfilled. Let's say you didn't put anything in base and exponent. If we didn't have return, it'll also check all of this, which if you have a lot of functions like these, if you have a lot of these functions running at the same time, it can bog down your code. So just cutting your function off where it's supposed to end, is just good. It's better logic for your computer. It's better optimization. Generally better for computer. So what does this do? Well, you might have seen this before because we did this in our previous project with what was it, the coin flip one, where not the coin flip one, but the random number generator, where we just take the value of this input field. So this value is stored as a string. So we say if there is no value, not base or not exponent, we say return please fill out the input fields, and it comes down here, and then you pretty much just set your output to whatever it returns. In this case, it would be please fill out all the input fields, and you see it actually works. If we just backspace here, please fill out the input fields, and this also works if you have one of them, because if we hit that, you see it has an OR gate. So that just means if this or this is true, then it'll return true and it'll execute this code. Okay, So then we turn these into integers. So now they've turned from strings into integers, so we can do math with them. But if it's a string and it's a it's also a character, so it's not a number, it's actually a letter. We can't turn that into an integer. So we do this again. So we say if this is not a number, so and also I'll put not a number, NaN. I'm sorry, NaN as I'll set NaN as these two. So oops, we're checking if these two are NaN, and then we do the same logic with an OR gate, and if excuse me, if they are not a number, then we will return please fill out the empty fields with numbers. And then if they are just if they did fill out it correctly and there are two numbers in both of the input fields, it'll just take the square. So math.pow stands for math.power, and it takes the base and the exponent, and it takes the base to the exponent. So like 4 to the 2, 3 to the 5, 9 to the 7, whatever you want, and it'll return that. So yeah, that's pretty much the code. As you can see, doing the new way is a lot faster, and I'll see you later.